All right. She's in charge. Hi everyone. So great to be here with you all after so long. I'd like to open up today with the Ganesh prayer, if everyone's okay with that. Om Gananam Tva Ganapatim Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamastravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatanaha Shrinvanutibihi Siddhasadamam Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Siddhi Buddhi Shakti Sahita Shriman Mahaganadipataye Namo Namaha Nirvignam Kuru. So Ganesh is the overcomer of obstacles, and I think in our personal lives and in the world right now, it's really good energy for us to call on. So if Ganesh is resonant for you, he's always available. So my name is Theresa V. I'm known here as Prema. I know most of you, I haven't seen some of you in a long time. Good to see you all on Zoom as well. I just did a year of intense training in Ayurveda, but I've been studying Ayurveda now for about almost 20 years. And Ayurveda changed my personal life. It changed my health. And it was the one thing that kind of encompassed everything else in life. And so this is why my love just blossomed. And I helped my system to heal itself of so many things that traditional medical doctors or Western medical doctors were saying they didn't understand. Like, why is it happening? Why is it happening to you? We don't get it. So when I brought Ayurveda in, it started to give a bigger picture. And I really feel with my whole heart that right now in the world, as we bring these systems into our lives that can connect the dots between all of the things we're experiencing and what the world is experiencing, that will be a much healthier culture. So today we're just going to do a little introduction to Ayurveda. And basically what Ayurveda is the science of life. And we're looking at all of life, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, when we talk about life. And that's basically what yoga does as well, right? I mean, it takes, you think you're just going to go to class the first time to do some poses, and all of a sudden your whole life is shifted because you took a yoga class. So Ayurveda itself, it's a science that tends towards a more medical science that comes from India. It's over 5,000 years old. And it feels like, when I started learning Ayurveda, they said it's over 5,000 years old. And it's been, feels like about 1,000 years. so since I've been studying, so it's older than that. It's built on the principles of 6 different philosophies. So basically, the philosophies of creation, the philosophies of life are all taken into account and merged so that we get a more comprehensive picture of why we're here. Yoga is one of those philosophies. So yoga and Ayurveda are tied together very closely. In in the Vedas and in the Upanishads, it's talked about as yoga, tantra, and Ayurveda all together. And when we look at these 3 sciences, they weave themselves so that we can get a holistic picture of ourselves and the world. So the yoga is the science of the union with the divine. It's the union with truth, right? That's why we study yoga, to really experience that union. The Tantra is the direct measure of controlling that union, the energy that comes with it. Once we establish that connection, what do we do with that energy? How do we move it through our bodies? And then Ayurveda is the science of life. Each one of these things helps with rejuvenation, with longevity, and with our spiritual awakening in its own way. The thing about yoga and tantra is you have to be very disciplined, right? It's a disciplined science where you have to come back and continue to cultivate. And Ayurveda can be worked with by anyone. So anyone can benefit from incorporating the principles that we're going to talk about today. They say that Ayurveda is sort of the foundation. Boring the cat. Um, Ayurveda is the foundation or the legs of the body. And then we're looking at yoga as the body. And then tantra is the head. It's the more of the mind. When we talk about Ayurveda, when we talk about life, just as we do in yoga, we talk about the Trinity. We talk about body, mind, spirit, right? So you can't treat the body without treating the mind and the spirit. You can't treat the spirit without treating the body. So none of these things can be separated. They all need to be working together and addressed when we're addressing our health in all the ways. So in our physical forms, right, this body decays, right? This body is something that experiences, like your car. It needs a tune-up every once in a while, right? You need to get pieces and parts replaced or fixed or whatever the situation is. And so this is why in this form we need guidance, we need help, we need treatment. We're subject to imbalances, we're subject to deterioration. And so it's not your fault when these things happen, it's just the nature of being alive. And so this is how we come to the place of acceptance. So many spiritual people move into self-judgment when they get sick, right? What did I do wrong? Which practice is off? I didn't take that yoga class. I should have taken yoga on Thursday and I wouldn't be sick right now, right? And we know that our discipline does us really well, but judging ourselves lowers our vibration and doesn't do us any services when we're trying to deal with our health. So that's one of the first things that we need to remember. And the interesting thing, I was just talking to Swami Mami about this recently, that when we look at the body, mind, and spirit, we tend to think that our mind lives in our body, right? Our spirit is housed in the body. But in truth, I keep touching this mic. In truth, the body lives within the mind, and the body and the mind live within the spirit. And this is the principle that Ayurveda is built on, right? The mind encompasses the sheath of the body. Like our mental body is bigger energetically than our physical body, and our spiritual body is even bigger than that. So if we start to address things in the spiritual body, it will have a direct effect on the other bodies. If we wait till it gets into the physical, right? If we're going through some mental stress, if we're having constant stress, constant anxiety, that's still in the mental body, it's out here, and it creates our physical experience. When we start to have the physical symptoms, it's harder to treat it because we need to work outward. It's the most dense. So we were just talking about, we have become very fragmented in the world, right? I identify as this, you identify as this, we're separate. You know, I have to go to a doctor for my knee. I have to go to a doctor for my elbow. The knee doctor and the elbow doctor don't look at the same thing. There is no one who really looks at us as a whole anymore. And so we start to look at ourselves in pieces as well. And this causes fragmentation in the way we view ourselves. We start to view ourselves as, you know, oh, I'm only the mental body, I'm only the spiritual body, I'm only the physical body. So specialization is phenomenal, right? It's great to go to a doctor who knows everything there is to know about your elbow. But what does that have to do with the rest of me? Why is my elbow hurting? What else is going on in my system? So we need to start viewing ourselves more as whole beings, having a holistic view of ourselves. And Ayurveda focuses on that. It focuses also on the individual. Like, I am not wired the same way as Tom. Like, we're different people. We have different needs. Our bodies are different. You know, we all are like that. And Ayurveda accounts for that. Whereas, you know, other sciences look at it more as the big picture. Okay, well, 80% of people respond well to this, so we're going to go with it, right? It doesn't account for those subtle differences in people. And that science is wonderful when combined with a science like Ayurveda, because then it can be like, well, if you're in that 20%, why didn't you respond well to that? And what can we do about it? Or how can we account for that? So in Ayurveda, we say that standardization is limitation. We're discounting important information about the individual when we standardize. So one person's needs are different than another person's. One person's medicine is another person's poison. It's we see that a lot with food. So broccoli can be really good for everyone except this person who's allergic to it. Why is that? And we're saying it's good, but it's not for this population. And how can we look at that? Or we can also look at it as most people back in the day when chickenpox was still a thing got the chickenpox and were fine. But other people, it took 2 years to recover from it. Why is that? What is it about this person or these people that was different? So it weaves itself really well with everything we're doing. Natural medicine, Western medicine, yoga, which is why Ayurveda is really beautiful. In yoga, we talk about oneness, right? How we're all connected. And Ayurveda is based on this principle, based on the principle of oneness, even though we don't necessarily talk about it in that way. You're not separate from anything. Nothing is separate from you. And in that, we'll get a little bit into the elements, but it also, we look at everything, all matter, organic and inorganic, is composed of the 5 elements. So this body and these flowers and this business card, they're all composed of the same 5 elements in different combinations. I'm composed of the 5 elements in a combination. Arturo's got a different composition. When we heal ourselves because of this oneness principle, we heal the world, right? So if you're taking your medication, if you're doing your yoga, creating that space in you ripples it out to the world and echoes that healing throughout the universe. The universe is the macro and the individual is the micro. So when we remember this, right, when we say, I'm going to do my practices today to better my life, to better the lives of everyone around me, but also to better the lives of those beings on Mars that I don't even know, we're moving into universal territory. The beautiful thing about oneness is the diversity within it, right? And when we can honor that diversity and when we can be who we are fully and completely, we can heal ourselves. We can be who we've come here to be. We are these beautiful points of light on this planet, right? We're here. And our field of consciousness goes as far as we'll allow it. So let's just say I'm only focused and conscious of what's going on in this room. But then I take a moment and I bring the consciousness out to the whole block. And then I do some meditation and I'm able to do the whole town, right? So we start to expand our consciousness and to view everything in our consciousness as part of our experience. Our view of the world starts to expand as we become more in line with ourselves, as we become more still in our meditation, right? We're bringing the attention here, but our consciousness expands. This is all relevant to where we're going with Ayurveda. And one of the most beautiful things that you can think about is from this place, this chair that I'm sitting on looks like it's standing still. But if I moved out into outer space and I put a dot where this chair is, I would actually see that the chair is moving and rotating with the planet, that the planet is moving around the sun. So the confines of our mind, the confines of our consciousness dictate our experience, right? So if I'm just looking at this chair as a still object, I'm missing the bigger picture, that it's moving in harmony with everything in the universe. And that's what happens to us, especially when we're facing a problem in our health, is we become so in that experience that we forget how we are connected to everything outside of us, how the bigger picture where everything is moving is working. And in that reconnection, which Ayurveda helps us to do through so many things, in that reconnection, that's where the healing can begin. Because separation is really the problem. Separation is the preventer of healing, basically. When we separate from each other, it gives us room, or when we separate from ourselves, it gives us room for judgment. And judgment creates confusion. It creates a conclusion. So you go worship this way, and that's not the way I do. So I'm judging you because we're different. But that's a conclusion. Like, I think I know what kind of person you are by that choice that you're making, but I don't. And that creates confusion, and that creates, I'm not seeing clearly anymore. So that clarity in all the places in our lives creates cloudy places in our system where we can't be 100% healed. So until we can step out of judgment, we can step out of that conclusion we draw about people and out of the confusion, we can't fully experience the oneness or perfect health. Ayurveda talks about relationships and the health of our relationships really reflecting the quality of our health back to us. And if our relationships are suffering, if we're uncomfortable in our relationships in any way, if our energy is lagging or flagging in the relationships, we need to, or in our lives also, if we're waking up weak and tired every day, we need to start by looking at our relationships. Where am I losing energy? Where can I reframe things? What is it that I need to do for me to fix this? So all of that being said, this was really to get the framework of how Ayurveda views us as beings and our place in the world. We are made up of the 5 elements, the Panchamahabhutas. The 5 great elements are earth, well, let's go in order: space, air, fire, water, and earth, right? So all of us are composed of those things. Everything in the world is composed of those things in different proportions. So you can probably guess, by knowing yourself for as many years as you have, like, what you are made up of, what your predominant element would be. So, are you somebody who loses their temper very quickly, right? Your predominant element is probably fire. Do you get hangry? Fire, because your digestion works hard. It goes quick and hard. Are you somebody who cries at commercials? Right? They come on. You're water. You're predominantly water. Are you somebody who is very solid, and people come to you for compassion, and you have a hard time maybe losing some weight because you are so solid, you are very together, so you're more earth. And that's, so when we start to see this, we can start to understand ourselves better. And in Ayurveda, we call our makeup, we call it dosha. And doshas are these psychophysiological principles in our body that speak to the makeup of who we are through the elements. Each of us, at the time of our conception, that moment when we are conceived, we are in our divinely perfect state. For the rest of our lives, that is our perfect state for this body in this lifetime. We will spend the rest of our lives trying to get back to that place, trying to get back to that balance. It's conception, and a lot of people are like, well, why isn't it birth? It's the time of conception because there are so many factors while we're still in utero that can affect how we experience the world, how we go out of balance. What is our mother eating? What is she feeling? What is the relationship of her with everything going on in our world? How are we interpreting things? Our dosha is the specific combination of the 5 elements. This is also known as our prakriti. So in Ayurveda, this is the Prakriti. This is our innate balance, our perfectly balanced state. We talk about this in three terms: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Vata is the combination of the air and ether elements. It's the principle of movement and activity. So, well, let's just go through all three. Pitta is fire and water in combination, and it is the principle of transformation in the body and in the world. Kapha is the combination of water and earth, and it's the principle of structure. So, each of us has all three of these things in our systems. We're made up of all three doshas, we're made up of all five elements. Every bodily activity needs movement, needs vata. Every way we digest, be it food, knowledge, understanding, needs pitta. Every way that we are held together, like our bodies hold themselves together, we're not like an arm is not falling off here, right? It's just kapha. Kapha is that force that holds us together and structures us. These are all wonderful things. And, a lot of people look at, oh, I want to be this and not this, or I wish I was this instead of this, but they're all important. The balance of the whole world, if we zoomed out and looked at the world, there would be probably an equal number of vata, pitta, and kapha people for balance. And there would be a lot of different concentrations of people based on where we live in the world. So that that being said, then when we talk about going out of balance, that's our vikriti. So let's just say, we'll play into this a little bit, but let's just say that you're someone who is very fiery, and all of a sudden you find yourself very anxious. You are out of balance. So this is how it starts to see. It's their imbalanced, unnatural, modified state. It's the current state of the individual as opposed to the prakriti, the state at the time of conception. The vikriti can go on for a second, it can go on for minutes, hours, days, years. The longer the imbalance is there, the more likely it is to create dis-ease in your body. So, so that's important for us to realize. So now we can talk a little bit about the characteristics of dosha, so we can play into a little bit of that. So if you are somebody who tends to be more fiery, if you get hungry, like if there is nothing else that you can do when you're hungry except eat or like off with their heads, if you are somebody who likes to study, if you um, if you understand things really quickly, then you are most likely a pitta person. A pitta person will probably look like a medium build, a little more athletic. This is also, not everyone falls into this category, but we're talking about the majority of people will meet these physical qualities. They'll be medium height. So think of pitta as medium. Most things are medium, right? Their coloring tends to be a little bit more reddish. No matter what their skin color is, it tends to be a little bit more on the red side. Then we're talking vata. Vata people tend to be tall, thin, wiry. They tend to have cracking joints and cracking bones. They will tend mentally to go from thing to thing to thing and not be as focused. They will learn very, very quickly and forget just as quickly, right? That's the overall tendency. Then when we talk about kapha people tend to be a little bit more sturdy. They tend to be the people who feel that, their bones are bigger, they're more, they might have hard time losing weight, and and so that's the more of the earth element, more of the water element. They're also very, very compassionate people. So if you look at Amma, the hugging saint, she is a kapha. She is like quintessential kapha. She is that energy that holds you in. So just from these descriptions, how many of us have an idea of where we might fall in here? Like, do you think you might know where your predominance is? Yeah. Yeah. So I put together, if you want, there's a QR code down there. I put together or the link will be posted in the Zoom if you're on Zoom, a dosha quiz that you can actually take. It goes through your physical, mental, emotional, behavioral body, and you can take the quiz and see where you fall, like where you fall in all of the bodies. And then you'll have that information for yourself so that you'll understand yourself better in all of the ways. So if you want, you can just scan that later on and you'll have access to that. It'll be emailed to you. So let's just look at, you think you know yourself. So when you're looking at yourself, look at yourself in terms of prakriti for your whole life. So if your whole life you've been someone who tends to be more short-tempered or more studious, let's say, so you would think, okay, I'm probably more pitta. And then all of a sudden now you're having trouble losing weight and you're having trouble focusing, right? So when you look at your prakriti, you want to look at the longer term, your whole life. When you look at your vikriti, you want to look at the last 6 months to a year. So if suddenly you say, well, I can't really say that I understand things quickly anymore because I'm forgetting them very quickly. Okay, so now you have an idea that maybe your vata is out of balance, right? So, or if I'm having trouble losing weight suddenly, maybe your kapha is a little out of balance. So you start to see yourself in terms of the long term, where I am in my life, and then the shorter term, where I am now. Is this making sense? Good. And though we have things like dosha quizzes and stuff like that, ultimately, the best way to know your prakriti and vikriti and to know about yourself is through the pulse. And an experienced Ayurvedic practitioner can take your pulse and it's said that in Ayurveda it takes, if you have taken 10,000 pulses, you're still considered a beginner. So that's how intricate the science of pulse reading is. But you can get a pretty good idea with things like the quiz. So, how many of us would say we're more vata at this point? If you're on Zoom, you can participate. How many of you think you would be more vata? Yeah. How many pittas do we have? Yeah. I'm like the poster child for pitta. How many kappas? Yeah. You're not sure? You're not sure? You're a kappa too? Yeah. It's so you get that, you get the idea, you start to understand yourself a little bit better. And if I took your pulse first thing in the morning and then I took it after you ate breakfast, your pulse would show something completely different because you're in a state of vikriti, imbalance, when you're digesting, right? It's not your normal balanced state. So that's what we need to understand, is everything in the world has the potential effect of taking us off balance. So the more centered and balanced and connected we can see ourselves as and be in the world, then the less that things going on outside of us have the opportunity to take us out of balance, to take us into that vikriti state. The other thing to consider is that as the seasons change, we were talking about this earlier, as the seasons change, it causes changes in our body. So we are in the quintessential time. This is the hardest time of year for so many people who are practitioners of yoga, even though everybody's like, oh, fall, I love it, I love it. This can be a very difficult time if you're prone to anxiety, if you're prone to not digesting well, if you're prone to joint problems, because what's starting to happen is the pitta, the heat of summer, is clearing, and the cold, dry air of fall is coming in. So if you are vata, prakriti, if you are a more vata person, it is very easy for this season to knock you off balance. So you'll be more prone to things like anxiety or joint pain. I mean, this is just, we're just going at like the big picture here. Also, so what you want to start doing is thinking about that and saying, how can I counter that? How can I counter the energy of coldness and dryness? And look at the elements, fire, water, earth, air, space. So if at this time of year, it's cold and dry, and a lot of us start finding ourselves having these vata type thoughts that like come in and out and we can't focus. So that's space. There's a lot more space, there's a lot more air right now. So how do we counter that in our lives? What would bring us into a more balanced state? Maybe some fire, right? Maybe some more earth. So it's just about starting to see yourself in the breakdown of the elements and really using those elements to your advantage. If our Vikriti and Prakriti match, then we're perfectly balanced. And then, honestly, we don't need to be here anymore. So what's the point? Just go. um, so so that's important. It's all about looking at the five elements, looking at where you are in your life, and looking at what's going on in the world and deciding how can I balance this. So those are some really important things that I wanted to cover today. I'm open to questions about any of this or about anything in Ayurveda. You have a question?
So I was wondering what your thoughts are. It seems like cultures, societies, religions, and even families
Mm-hmm.
have a great influence on, how to say, maybe confusing what you are. For example, you brought up commercial. In a lot of arenas, people are told not to cry,
Mm-hmm.
so they withhold that. So, just thoughts on any of that?
That is such a great question, and I love this because our society, let's just stick with this society first. Our society does not value the traits of kapha, right? So kapha is compassionate. Kapha tends to be more sturdy, so it can be a bigger body. It can be a more solid body. It can be more emotional, like more open to expressing emotion. Our society doesn't value any of those things, right? We need to think on our feet. We need to be quick. We need to do multitasking. So a lot of kapha people have been spending their whole lives up until this point trying to be something they're not, right? Trying to say, I can't be who I was created to be because it's not valued by my family or society, or someone's constantly telling me, you need to lose weight, or you need to be less emotional, or whatever your experience of it is. And so I'm using kapha as an example because it's what we're living right now. And right now we're starting to see that change a little bit. But this is why so many people they feel like they're not living their purpose because they can't even be who they were created to be at the moment of their conception, to embody and embrace those traits about themselves and to express them freely because they're always being told they're wrong. And so the hard part is not having people around you who view yourself the same way. And so, for a lot of us who come to yoga, we might have different values or different things that become important to us over time than the people we're around all of the time. And when we start to find ourselves around other people who value similar things or who feel comfortable expressing themselves in certain ways, we find freedom for ourselves. And so I think that that's really important right now to do the same. So if you are someone who doesn't feel like you can embrace who you were created to be, then finding people like you is a really great way to start. And just, because when you have people like you, it almost matters less what other people think, and you can be more of who you truly are. And is this making sense? Is this to what you're saying? And I've been thinking a lot about this, especially seeing a lot of kapha clients who are coming to me like basically saying, I don't want to be a kapha anymore. It's like, well, you don't have that option. So how can we make this an amazing experience for you and this body that you have, this gorgeous body that's doing so much for you and for the world. So, and then there's the vata people too, where you're too skinny, you can't focus. Everyone has their own version of this. The pitta people, why are you so mean? Like, will somebody feed her? So so it's always that. So I love that question, and I love feeling into that. You said you weren't sure. Do you have any inclination where you might fall onto?
Well, I have very little experience with Ayurveda, but I have taken similar tests, maybe the same,
Mm.
try to evaluate. I seem to feel like I'm within all three. Maybe,
You
of
are.
course, maybe a little bit more one
Yeah.
for me personally.
Yeah. We all are all three, and it's just
Yeah.
the proportion. By any chance, were you born prematurely? Okay. Okay. Because that's the only time that this might be a little bit different. Yeah. Awesome.
Can
So,
anyone be perfectly balanced?
in an ideal world, yes. Um, but there are so many factors to achieving balance that it's almost like sometimes you might feel perfectly balanced for that split second, when you get in meditation and you have that, like, and then something happens in life. Maybe if you get to the enlightened master state, you would probably be closer to balance, but I do imagine there would still be things that would try your patience and knock you off. But I do think that the enlightened master type people are probably as close to balance as you can get for the duration of time. And each of us can have those moments of being perfectly balanced. Like, you might wake up and feel fantastic all day and you do all the things, and then the next day you wake up and you're like, oh, okay. Here we are again. And yoga, when we take a yoga class, it gets us that much closer to embracing our unique balance, our innate balance. And the beauty of that, the beauty I find with a yoga class, is we do get that much closer to our innate balance, but that we do it through the practice with other people, right? If we're practicing alone, it's a much different experience than if we're practicing with other people. And and that's what I love, is everyone getting into their more balanced state, embracing themselves more in that room allows the space and the opening for us to do that as well. And that's the microcosm. If we take that out to the world, if each of us did this out in the world and walked and said, this is who I am, and these are my innate gifts, and I'm going to embrace them, how much better would this world be? Wouldn't that be amazing?
What do you suggest? Like you opened, you said a lot of people when they get ill,
Mm-hmm.
they get judged about. Like if you take a simple person and they say, "Oh, you got breast cancer," go to the doctor, remove the breast, have chemo, fine. Then you take someone maybe a little higher than power circle. They go, "Why would I get it? Is it negative thinking? I don't want to do chemo. I want to do vitamins." You go through this. Is the person who just accepts what I'm going to remove my breast, have chemo, go on my way, or the person who does sort of the mental gymnastics, are they worse off, and do they send negative hormones throughout their body as
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to heal? And I've seen this.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't know if everybody could hear that, but I'll just basically, the question is, if there's a question about judgment, judging ourselves when we get sick, and which way is better. Is it just accepting a diagnosis of something and then moving through the prescribed way of treating it? Let me know if I versus starting to question yourself, like, what's my part in this? Where did I go wrong? And what are the alternative things that I can do to help my health, right? Beautiful. So, and we're seeing a lot of this in the world right now, in all the ways. And what I love about Ayurveda is it can work with any of that. So, in terms of someone blindly just going into, this is my diagnosis and I'm going to follow what they say, that may be the health route for them. That may be where they're putting their trust in someone else or in the prescribed route, whether and that could be with vitamins too. Like, they can just be like, I'm going to do this vitamin regimen because so and so told me to. And so there's an element of, if they believe it's going to work, right, then it will have the best possible outcome. If you truly believe in what you are doing, then you'll have the best possible outcome of it or with it. But if you're not examining, what in my life is off besides my physical body, right? Are there situations that need to change? Are there thoughts that I have that recur? Are there situations I need to get myself out of or put myself into? then your healing will probably not be complete. You may set yourself up for a similar thing in the future because you didn't address the problem. So the thing is, we can take a pill, we can take an herb, we can do any of that. It's a band-aid. What's the bigger thing that we need to look at, right? So when we do, take the moment to say, are these my thoughts? What is it that I could do? But to do that from a place of truly questioning and sitting in the exploration versus saying, oh, you're wrong. You caused this situation. You're a bad person. You should have known better, right? That's the judgment. So it's how do we do that exploration, and is there judgment involved? So when we can be open and loving with ourselves in the face of something that's big and scary and choices we need to make, that's when we'll have the best outcome. And we might choose a more traditional route because that's what feels right to us, but we're choosing that route from a place of empowerment versus from a place of giving our power away to somebody else and telling them to make the choice for us. Make sense?
Body, which is the yoga part, aspect, and the mind aspect of us changing our thought pattern. How do you address like dietary nutrition?
Oh, I could talk about this for like years. This is my favorite part of Ayurveda. Is the So one of the most simple things that I can tell you, like you can go through diet lists. There's extensive diet lists. Like if you're Vata predominant, this is the diet. Yes, no. You know, one of the simplest things I can say to everybody who wants to be more in line with your balanced state right now is start eating seasonally. Know what's growing in your area at any particular time and eat more of those foods, right? So no matter what your dosha is, no matter what your imbalance is, if you start doing that, you will start to bring yourself into harmony with your environment. You'll start to bring yourself back into harmony with yourself. So, whether you're a vegetarian or not, it doesn't matter. Right now, let's say here, there's potatoes, there's squash, those are all very kapha foods. They're very grounding foods. If you think about how potatoes grow, they grow on the earth. So we're eating more of that because everything outside right now is ungrounding us. So as we eat more grounding foods, it brings us. So, but if you are kapha, like if you feel your kapha predominant, you might already feel heavy and grounded. So you want to eat those things, but also incorporate things to counter what you're feeling. Does that make sense? If you start to think in terms of the elements as well.
Right. That brings me to the next question. Because you mentioned how do you incorporate fire, or you can incorporate water, that's easy.
Mm-hmm.
So like the fire element, daily function.
Yeah. So think about spicy food. Are we talking specifically about food right now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, spicy food. That's the quintessential way. You can even lemon water will also help with your digestive fire. Um, Ginger, yep, spices, any spices. It doesn't have to be Your food doesn't have to be spicy like hot, but well spiced food also does wonders for your digestion. Spices are key to health. They're
And fire element, how would you bring that in? Not food.
If it's not food, well, you can do, there are certain pranayams you can do to bring in the fire element. You can actually light candles. You can do tratak meditation where you gaze at the fire. You can, there's so many, you could do yoga poses that cause you to have that internal fire. You can do Agni poses, like there are yoga poses specifically for your Agni. Yeah, anything focused on the health of your digestion will help your fire element to balance. Make sense? Thank you. Wait, who did somebody have a hand up over here? Donald's pointing. Okay.
Anyway, so I'm a little, maybe you can clear up my confusion. Are we born into this world like with a dharma, with a dosha?
Mhm.
And if the purpose of, or we want to balance our doshas,
Mhm.
is it normal procedure for as we age for our doshas to change? Is that general or that's individual?
So our prakriti, our perfectly balanced state, doesn't change during our lifetime. So that's always your balance. So in an ideal world, you all vata pitta kapha would be the same. So for the most part, when someone takes your pulse or gives you your prakriti reading, it'll be like, so let's use mine for example, pitta 3, vata 2, kapha 1, right? So that's the proportions. So my whole life now, I'm striving to be pitta 3, vata 2, kapha 1, except that if I'm in deep grief, I'm off balance, So the aging process also can, older people, the older you get, like if we all know people in like their 80s and 90s who are cold all the time, right? Because you're in the vata stage of life. We'll talk more about that there in the workshop. But you're in the vata stage of life that time, and so those vata qualities, no matter what your predominant dosha is, will start to come up in your body. So you'll start to feel colder. Your bones will start to crack. In terms not break, but make noise, and they'll be more prone to breaking. If you have a fall. So yes, everything is interconnected. The earth, the environment, like everything is made up of elements. Everything has a doshic makeup. And everything can affect your dosha. So the more you can know about the way you came in, when you're born, you might be off balance, right? So at the moment of conception, I'm pitta 3, vata 2, kapha 1. I might be born pitta 4. If it was like if my mother was angry at the time of birth, and I might, so you just don't know. Your whole life can shift as soon as you start to try to bring yourself back to balance. And one of the easiest ways to do that is, that was a great question, eat seasonally. It's really a good way to bring you.
How does
Yeah.
free radicals play a role in
Yeah, I mean that's a whole other conversation that I think so if you all want to come to the workshop, we'll be doing a workshop on the 23rd, and we'll get more into that. But yes, free radicals, everything in the world can play into your homeostasis. The other thing is, so these sunshine lectures are all donation based. So if you would love to make a donation to the ashram, you can either do that here, or we'll post a link if you're on Zoom, so that the ashram can keep doing these fantastic lectures. I've been given so yeah.
How many pulse readings have you done? 10,000 yet?
Not yet. Not yet. Especially when, I've been doing pulse for a long time, and I'll just give you a very quick overview. There's actually 7 layers of the pulse. And the deepest layer is your prakriti. And then the most superficial layer is your vikriti. And so, yeah. Yeah, so we'll talk more about that.
I'm trying to get free information.
You know where to find me. But yeah, so again, if you want like, the quiz that we created does all of, like, it takes you through all of your makeup, and you'll see how my mental body and my physical body might not agree. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here. I so appreciate all of you, and thank you, Moksha Priya, for having